Hi, for this lesson plan, we will be looking at identity in code and interpreting Bert's barcode series. We'll see some of his work and some of Shepard Fairey's work that we would be referencing in this lesson in just a minute. What the teacher will do, kind of the normal stuff here, we have introducing the lesson, guiding the different discussions through them, providing instruction materials, modeling the artistic techniques through little demonstrations or an example of the finished product, observe and support students, critique, help guide through critiques and reflection activities, assess and document their student learning as they go through the lesson, and then organizing those materials and time management. I added some of the artworks of the artists we would be looking at, which would be Guillermo Bert's, mainly his barcode series, but also a few other ones that he has, and then kind of incorporating that same kind of messages and things that we see from Shepard Fairey, who's also local, and we have a lot of mural work of his locally that we can kind of pull from. So they'd be looking at artistic concepts, processing knowledge, and then again just kind of technical knowledge that they're building upon from the basic art techniques. Things that they'll learn that they're kind of always learning with other lessons as well is different creative skills, critical thinking skills, being able to build upon technical and practical skills. So all of that kind of, introductory principles and elements, kind of building on that. They would also be working on communication skills, as groups, with the teacher, even with themselves, with being able to reflect and even just kind of learning self-pacing, right? So in any studio, you have so much time, you have things you want to do, and kind of learning how to pace that through the course. Different types of assessment that they'll be looking at. We will have warm-ups and exit tickets. Depending on how the lesson's going with each class, I might kind of alter these or change these or kind of show different artworks if I feel like the class is going towards something else. So kind of pulling from what I see the day before, maybe adding something in each day for that. They would have their workbooks and sketchbooks that they use to kind of plan and document. There'd be class discussions, peer conversations, digital portfolio process documentation. So I do have them provide a digital portfolio with the finished artwork as well as some process images that they do. And then also teacher observations. Some summative assessments that they'll be working on are the final artwork that they create, having that artwork presented in a gallery walk with their peers to kind of look at, critique, discuss, a self-reflection that is kind of part of the rubric that they grade themselves, and then I take that and grade that as well. Again, that digital portfolio submission, so kind of that final submission of what they put together, and then different assessment tools and criteria that will kind of be used through the lesson. They will make a 12 by 18 artwork. I will give them tag board if they want to do something more, like maybe use some cardboard or something. That I'm kind of open to that, but I'll kind of start with giving them that tag board, and they can kind of go from there. They will have to combine some sort of barcode or QR code. They can even make their own QR code and link it to something if they like. If they want it to be purely visual, they can do that as well. If they want to pull a barcode from something that they like and kind of utilize that barcode, again, totally open to kind of realistic connections, or even just having symbolic references on there too, so they can have text. They should have some sort of text on there, and then also some sort of message, so something related to identity, culture, some sort of social connection. They are welcome to use things that we would have gone over by this point in the class, so they would have markers, maybe some paint, collage materials, metallic accents, colored pencils, watercolors, whatever they feel like will help them the best to present their message. It's pretty open-ended, just making sure it relates to an issue, relates to them, and there's some sort of connection there. So they're going to explore things like symbolism, repetition, even playing with color to communicate some sort of clear and thoughtful message. And again, that message can vary student by student. One that I stuck pretty basic. I did the tag board with some markers and then some gold acrylic in there. I did one called The Caregiver. This would be an example of the slide that they would turn in. This would be an example of the finished artwork. We have some concept mapping that I did and some sketches, even another example that I started and didn't really care for it as much, so I kind of changed the concept here. And just that idea of, providing for your family, how much things cost, the weight of that, time, kind of all of these things kind of pulling together in that. So this would be like my example that I made. A few worksheets and documents that they would have. These would be in their workbook. That's essentially a sketchbook and a workbook that they would use. So some of their sketches would be on the back pages of these. We would have the art analysis in the beginning that they would do at their table. They would all get an artwork per table. They would look at it individually, assess that. So we'd have I have 7 tables. So they'd have 7 artworks out there. Each group would look at it themselves, talk about it as a group after, and then present that to the class. So they would essentially learn a lot about one of the artworks, break it down, and then learn kind of what the other tables thought about a different artwork and kind of present those on the projector. I have an example of the slide where they would put their info in and then eventually add this to a bigger slideshow that they would turn in at the end of the year with all of their work, including pre-tests and assessments and things like that. And then we have the rubric that they would look at. This would look very similar to every other rubric they would have throughout the year. And this literally asks them questions. So it's like, were you here every day? Did you have a positive attitude? Is your work complete? Did you use your time effectively? And based off of what they think, they can grade themselves. Then they can kind of, turn that in. They can leave notes to me. Maybe they felt like they struggled with this one, or there's something specific that they didn't like. They can kind of leave a note of that they acknowledge that, recognize that, writing on the back of the page what they would do differently or what they did like. So giving a little bit more open-ended conversation with that when that is turned in and looked at. And, there would be other things too, like sketches, like I said, on the back of some of these exit tickets where they might turn in a little paper of what their final idea might be for their project. There would be little things kind of added in, and some of that's subject to change or kind of moves through the lesson as we kind of see which direction it goes. So that would all, kind of be compiled together. It'd all be all in one spot, and then they would just present some of that into that slideshow. And that is about it. So thank you for watching. Oh, I got my resources too real quick. Some references of where I found some of the artwork that we'd be looking at. All right, thank you.